Hi everyone. This is Advanced Music Theory, lesson number 5. We're going to be talking about additional seventh chords beyond the ones that we learned last week. To do this, we're going to use musictheory.net and we're going to go to the lessons section. And towards the bottom, we're going to find more seventh chords. We're going to use that lesson today. So, more seventh chords. So we have a few more types of seventh chords that are used a lot in particularly pop music and jazz, not so much in classical, although they do occur quite a bit in classical music as well. Especially once you get to the 19th century and even the beginning of the 20th century, you're gonna find some of these more colorful or like unusual seventh chords. The ones that we learned last week are really common, even going back to the 17th century and the 18th century. So they've been around in classical music for many hundreds of years. So let's learn about 3 additional types of seventh chords. We have what's called a minor major seventh chord. A minor major seventh chord is made up of a minor triad at the bottom and the major seventh on top combined. So remember, the seventh chords are chords of 4 distinct notes or 4 distinct pitches. And they're usually formed by stacking a triad at the bottom and then having the seventh degree of the scale up top. And this is specifically in root position, no inversion, just root position. So this seventh chord is built by having a minor triad at the bottom and a major seventh on top. So we are going to abbreviate this chord as a lowercase m, uppercase M, and a 7. There are a few other ways to abbreviate or notate this chord, but this is just one of them. Sometimes you'll see lowercase m and then a triangle 7 indicating a major seventh. There are a few ways to do it. So, but the most important thing is how do we build it and what it sounds like. So let's build a C minor major seventh chord. So we need to start with a minor triad, which is C, E flat, G, right? So that's our minor triad. And then we're gonna stack a major seventh above the root, which is B natural. And it sounds like this. So if you remember, this chord is very similar to the minor 7 that we studied last week. The minor 7 is Do, Mi, Sol, Si, B flat. This one is C, E flat, G, B natural. So it's almost the same, except for that final note is going to have the leading tone and not the flat 7. So pretty similar, just a minor detail up top that gives it a very distinct sound. Let's build one starting in F sharp. So F sharp minor major seventh chord begins with a minor triad, which is F sharp, A natural, C sharp. And then we add a major seventh on top. So the major seventh of F sharp is E sharp. And remember that enharmonically speaking, E sharp raising E natural by a half step gives us E sharp, which is the same pitch as F natural, just a different spelling. And that's how we know that that's the leading tone or the major seventh of F sharp. So when we listen to it, it's going to sound like this. Let me play it back to back with C major minor major 7. Now let me play that one back. All right, so as you can see, they have a very similar sound. I'm going to skip the next example, and you guys can do it at home. We're going to look at the augmented major seventh chord. So this seventh chord is built by starting with an augmented triad. And remember that the augmented triad is going to be that augmented fifth is going to have that perfect fifth, and we're going to raise that fifth by a half step, and that's going to give us our augmented triad. And then we're going to have a major seventh on top of that. We're going to notate this chord by plus uppercase M7. So we're going to build a C augmented major seventh chord. And that's going to be C, E natural, G sharp is our augmented triad. And as you can see, we've raised G natural by a half step up. That gives us our augmented triad. That gives us our augmented fifth instead of our picture fifth, which is what we would normally have on a major triad. So we then stack the major seventh on top, which is going to be of C, that's going to be B natural. And combined, they give us the C augmented major seventh chord. Let's listen. So I love this chord because I think it sounds really mysterious. I always think of like in movies where like they're doing like detective work or like someone sneaking around and like in the dark. Often the music that goes along in those moments will use this chord a lot. So it's like a very kind of mysterious and a little bit mischievous almost sounding chord. Anyway, let's try to build the augmented major seventh chord in F sharp. So here we're going to have our augmented triad, which is F sharp, A sharp, and the raised fifth degree, which instead of C sharp is going to be C double sharp. Remember that the double sharp just adds another half step to C sharp. That actually ends up going so 1 and 2 half steps above, which is D natural, the same pitch as D natural, is just a different spelling of that pitch. So C sharp is a step above C natural, which is the same pitch as D natural. Just keep that in mind. C double sharp, sorry, I should say not C sharp, C double sharp. And so we have our augmented triad, and then we stack the major seventh above. And remember that E sharp is the major seventh of F sharp, is the leading tone. And when we combine that, we end up with this. All right, so let me play them back to back. Cool, so you guys start to hear the similarities in sound of these chords. All right, let's skip the next example and let's move on to our third and final form of the seventh chord for this lesson. And that is the augmented seventh chord. So the augmented seventh chord is built by starting with an augmented triad, like the last example, but instead of a major seventh on top, we're going to have a minor seventh above. So it's almost the same as the previous example, the augmented major seventh. This one's an augmented seventh with a minor seventh on top. So let's take a look at how to abbreviate it first, which is a +7. If whenever you see this under a chord, that lets you know that it's an augmented 7 chord. So let's build C augmented 7th chord. So we start with the augmented triad, C, E natural, and G sharp. The G sharp is the augmented 5th degree, or like the raised 5th degree by a half step. So that gives us our augmented 5th. And then we stack the minor 7th on top. And B flat is the minor 7th on top of C natural. And this is what we end up with. Also a very mysterious sounding chord. I just always think of this chord as sounding kind of like a riddle or like a question, but like a question where like you really don't know what the answer is. So yeah, I mean, I like to sometimes think of like these musical features as having a certain character, and certainly composers and musicians use a lot of these ideas of music theory, especially of chords, to um, kind of characterize different emotions. And the more you watch, the more you pay attention to these things in songs, and especially in movie soundtracks, the more you're gonna see that like a lot of these ideas kind of resonate with people because they get used a lot, and they becomes part of like the culture of our music. It ends up utilizing these devices in very similar ways, often. So let's build one more F sharp augmented seventh chord. Let's start with our augmented triad, which is F sharp, A sharp, C double sharp, just like we had before. But now, this time, instead of a major seventh, we have a minor seventh, and that is going to be E natural instead of E sharp. So we end up with F sharp, A sharp, C double sharp, and E natural. And it sounds like this. All right. And we're gonna skip A flat, but I encourage you guys to like look at these examples as well. Um, but for now, we're just gonna skip it for the sake of time, so that this video doesn't get too long. And let's take a look at the final chart for reference of all the chords that we just covered. So this is a good time to do a final overview of this lesson. So actually, this one has all of them from last week as well. So let's go through them real quick. So all the 7 chords. Let's start from the top. Dominant 7, start with a major triad and a minor 7th on top, and is abbreviated with a single 7. Major 7 starts with a major triad and has a major 7th on top, and is abbreviated with capital M and the 7. Minor 7 is a minor triad and the minor 7th on top, and it's abbreviated with lowercase m and the 7. Half diminished 7th is a diminished triad initially, so diminished 5th, remember that. And then a minor 7th on top, and is abbreviated with the circle with the slash through it and the number 7. And the fully diminished or diminished 7th is a diminished triad, so remember the diminished 5th, and the diminished 7th as well. So we've taken the minor 7 and we've lowered it by a half step, and that gives us a diminished 7th. And that's going to be abbreviated with a circle and a 7. So today's 7 chords were the final 3 here. A minor major 7th begins with a minor triad and the major 7th on top, and is abbreviated with lowercase m, uppercase M, and the number 7. Augmented major 7th starts with an augmented triad and a major 7th stacked on top, and is abbreviated with plus capital M 7. And finally, the augmented 7th is an augmented triad at the bottom and a minor 7th on top, and that is abbreviated with a plus 7. All right, so there are a lot of 7th chords out there, and takes a little bit of time to get used to all of them. So I encourage you guys to practice this a lot, and I'll be attaching a video exercise for these 3 triads. So these 3 7 chords that we covered today, so that we can practice on working with them today. All right, see you guys later.